Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm your host for tonight's show, Rockin Robbie Billups, and we got a great one tonight. We are returning to Creator Conversations tonight. We are welcoming back to the show the creator of Gargoyles and the showrunners for fantastic shows like Spectacular Spider-Man and Young Justice. He's here to talk about his upcoming series of one-shots for Marvel and Dynamite, where the Fantastic Four are meeting the Gargoyles. So let's welcome in Greg Weisman. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Happy to have you back here. Last time you were here, we went in depth about how you entered the comic book industry over at DC, how you started work at Disney, pitched Gargoyles, got that successfully launched, and then we talked a little bit about Spectacular Spider-Man. But one thing we didn't talk about that I do want to is I want to know, what are your comic book origins? Like, when did you first get introduced to comics, and what comics were they, and what captivated you about the industry?
Um, I started reading comics as a little kid. I would collect comics until the summer when I would go away to summer camp, and my dad would throw them all away. Because from his point of view, they were magazines. You don't keep magazines and newspapers. That's just trash. You throw them away. So, but if I bought big treasury size editions, he thought, well, those might, they were all reprints, of course, not the ones he was throwing away, but the ones that he thought were worth something. Excuse me, as I mentioned, I've got a cold, so I'm struggling a little bit here. But so I tended to buy these reprints, these big treasury, jumbo size reprint things, because those were the ones he wouldn't throw away. Later, I was able to tell him that he threw away my tuition to college, which wasn't true. Nothing I was buying was worth that much money, but it made him feel sufficiently guilty about it, or regretful, I should say. And I read DC and Marvel as a little kid. I didn't even get that there were companies, and like I'd see Green Lantern team up with Batman, and I'd see Spider-Man team up with Captain America, and for all I knew, Batman and Captain America would team up next week. I didn't get initially that, oh no, there are walls, right? But eventually, you get older, you clue into that, and I would start creating my own characters and put them on an Earth in between the Marvel Earth and the DC Earth, so that characters could cross over, because I still like that idea. And I love it, that they're doing some crossovers now. And I love that we're getting to do Gargoyles Fantastic Four. That's a lot of fun. And we're following that up with Gargoyles Darkwing Duck, which is also bizarre and goofy and fun.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, we are in an era right now where they're going back to these crossovers. So I think next year is the 50th anniversary of the very first DC Marvel crossover, the Spider-Man Superman that they did.
Right.
And so I've heard rumors that they're actually going to go back to that. We just had the Deadpool Batman. Now we got the Batman Deadpool on the horizon. But yeah, Fantastic Four. So I started reading comics, and the immediate title that hooks me in is Fantastic Four. Like, Reed, Sue, Ben, and Johnny are as much of a family to me, because I started reading when I was like 5, 6 years old, and that was the one title. Like, all of my other friends, they loved X-Men, they loved Spider-Man, and I liked that stuff too, but there was something about the Fantastic Four that I really gravitated towards. So like I said, these are like members of my extended family. So I'm very excited to see that out of all the Marvel properties, it's Fantastic Four, because I think that Gargoyles, Manhattan has a lot to do with the Marvel Universe, has a lot to do with the Gargoyles universe, but I think Fantastic Four is kind of like really perfect for that. Plus, they just had a movie. How did this project come about?
So my editor at Dynamite, Nate Cosby, contacted me and said they want to do a crossover with Marvel. Who do you want to cross over? And at the time, I was writing Gargoyles for Dynamite and the Spectacular Spider-Man, Peter and Miles, for Marvel. And so it seemed natural to me. I said, let's do Spider-Man / Gargoyles. And he gets back to me and says, no, you can't do Spider-Man. Pick something else. So I said, well, okay. The whole metaphor for racism is a big part of Gargoyles. It's a big part of X-Men. Let's do Gargoyles X-Men. That seems like a good fit thematically. And they said, came back and said, no, you can't do X-Men. And I said, all right, can I stop guessing? Just tell me. I love all the Marvel characters. Tell me who you want me to do.
Yeah, just give me a list, bro. I'll pick.
Yeah. And so I had in Spectacular Spider-Man written a few issues with Ben and Johnny as guest stars. And out of that, I had written an issue. I guess they thought I did a decent enough job. I'd written a story for Fantastic Four Fanfare, which just came out. And I guess they thought I did a decent job doing all 4 of the Fantastic Four in that. And so I imagine that sort of led them, in combination with the movie, to say, all right, let's do Gargoyles Fantastic Four. And I said, that's perfect because, both of them live in skyscrapers in Manhattan, Baxter Buildings in Midtown, the Erie Buildings on Central Park South. And they're both sort of the foundation families of their respective universes. And in fact, and you can stop me if I told this story last time I was on your show, but, when I was at Disney doing Gargoyles, I was in a meeting where Michael Eisner, at the time was chairman of the Walt Disney Company, said, I want to buy Marvel. This is decades before Disney actually bought Marvel. And he was talked out of it in real time in the meeting. They're like, Marvel had declared bankruptcy, so he could have gotten Marvel for peanuts, right?
Yeah.
But they're like, you don't want Marvel. You want Marvel. You think you want Marvel, so you can make a Spider-Man movie. But the people at Marvel have triple sold Spider-Man to Sony and to this studio and to that studio, and you won't be able to make Spider-Man. It's just a disaster, and so I watched very disappointed as they talked Michael out of it. And when they had successfully done this, he said, all right, well, we've still got a problem because Warner Brothers has the DC heroes, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and we just don't have anything like that at Disney. It's a whole area that we're missing out on. And so he turned to me and he said, could we make Gargoyles the beginning of a Disney action universe? And I said, yeah, we can. And so I very consciously, in season 2 of Gargoyles, we did backdoor pilots for things like Pendragon and New Olympians and others. And the idea was Gargoyles would be the first family of the Gargoyles universe, the Manhattan Clan. But we would start creating other heroes and expand that universe, and it would become, an action universe. And obviously the Fantastic Four is the first family of the Marvel universe. So this idea, when in 1961, when Fantastic Four premiered, it wasn't like Jack and Stan were going, okay, this is going to be the foundation of a universe. They were just doing the Fantastic Four. Then they would do something else, and then they would tie it together and go, oh, fans really respond well when we tie it together. And the universe began very organically, in essence. And we were going to have, in Gargoyle land, so to speak, have a lot more pre-thought about it. But that would be the idea, that we would expand out. So when they came to me, and then, of course, years later, Bob Iger buys Marvel for a fortune.
Yes, billions, right? Yeah.
Right, billions, as opposed to the pennies that Eisner could have gotten it for years earlier.
It didn't like a cosmetic company wind up buying Marvel or something shortly after the
Some
bankruptcy, or
point,
was that
yeah.
before, something like that, like Revlon, something like that?
I don't know, but you know, they got their act together. They'd done Iron Man. They'd done all sorts of stuff by the time Disney bought it, and it was worth a lot of money, and they paid for it. But, you know, Eisner could have gotten it for nothing. Or not nothing, but a lot less.
Yeah.
Substantially less. But, you know, times change, whatever. So now they come to us, and both Gargoyles and indirectly Fantastic Four are owned by Disney. They want to do this crossover. And they say, do Fantastic Four. And I'm like, that is perfect. That's great. So, you know, I'd love to be the brilliant guy who said, hey, let's team these two up. It wasn't me. It was someone else who suggested it. But I was all on board once they said that.
Yeah, because you were Spider-Man first. Is Spider-Man like your favorite Marvel hero, would you say?
No. I mean, I love him. And I'm associated with him both from the show and the comic. But I have many favorites at Marvel. You know, there are lots of characters that I adore. Peter's certainly one of them. I've really come to be fond of Miles. But I love Ben and Johnny. And that's why I brought them into the Spectacular book. And
I've even heard you wanted Human Torch in Spectacular Spider-Man, the series, the animated series, but they obviously, with the Fox thing going on, you couldn't do that, right?
Right. That was off limits at the time. But yeah, I always loved the relationship between Johnny and Pete. And I wanted that for Spectacular, but it wasn't doable. It wasn't a creative note. It was a contractual problem. And there was hope held out that eventually we might be able to arrange it, but I wanted it for season 1, and we couldn't get it for then, and we couldn't get it for season 2. And we might never have been able to get it, but we ended with season 2, so it became moot at some point. But, you know, when I was able in Spectacular to bring Ben and Johnny in, that relationship, you know, Johnny has the mustache now, and I said to Nick, my editor, I said, there's no way Peter's not going to comment on that mustache. He's like, go for it. So, you know, that sort of, you know, they're friends, but they also rag on each other, and that kind of give and take.
Well, good for Peter, because as a lifelong FF fan, I hate that mustache on Johnny. I really do.
I'm not a big fan of it either, but it made for comedy in the book, so I can't complain too much. And so I do adore a lot of Marvel characters. Obviously, I adore a lot of DC characters as well. Again, I just grew up with superheroes, and a lot of people talk like, I'm a DC guy, I'm a Marvel guy, and I'm like, I'm kind of a superhero guy, you know, so I don't really care which company was putting them out. And if it were up to me and I had all the money in the world, I would buy Marvel and DC and combine them, because why the hell not, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So in this so there's 2 different books. There's Fantastic Four meets Gargoyles.
Actually, 3 in a sense, because the first thing we did is we were doing Demona Zero already, which was for Free Comic Book Day, and it was a preview of what a little hint of what was coming in the Demona book, the Demona miniseries, which is ongoing right now. The first 3 issues are out. Issue 4 comes out later this month, and issue 5 the month after. But at the very end of Demona Zero, for Free Comic Book Day, there's a 4-page sort of tag where 3 of our gargoyles, Angela, Lexington, and Broadway, see a flare go up in the sky with a big number 4. And they investigate. It leads them to the Baxter Building, and they encounter the Fantastic Four, which is exactly where that ends, and is exactly where the Marvel book, which comes out this month, picks up, with Angela, Broadway, and Lex meeting the Fantastic Four. And then it sort of takes off from there. And then a month after that, we've got the Dynamite book. So Marvel's is Fantastic Four meets Gargoyles, and Dynamite's book next month is Gargoyles meets the Fantastic Four.
Are they tied in together?
What? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, are they tied in together?
They are.
They
So
separate?
all three of these stories, from the end of that little tease in Demona Zero, the Marvel book, and the Dynamite book, those three stories are in continuity with each other. Now, I also tried to make them as much in continuity with the Gargoyles series and the Fantastic Four series as I could, but let's not kid ourselves. These are different universes most of the time. But we decided just to play it. And so if you want, this is yet another universe where both the Fantastic Four and Gargoyles exist. If that makes it easier for people to comprehend, that's fine. But basically, this is just a fun thing, not to be taken too seriously, but I think they're fun stories that have a little meat to them. The Fantastic Four is a family, and ultimately includes Rena and Sue's kids, and Alicia Masters, and various other characters. And the Gargoyles is a clan that has, over time, gotten pretty big. So I didn't want to try to fit every member of the clan into each story. But we had some fun, putting certain characters up against other characters. And with, I think, some surprising cameos in both books.
Heck yeah. I like that you say, you could just read it and they just think this happens to be a universe where they exist. I remember the first time I read the Superman Spider-Man book that they did back in I guess 1976, right? And
I remember
the first time I read that, I'm three crisis events in. So I'm expecting some kind of crazy wormhole to open up to cause it all to collide, and it's no, it's just New York and Metropolis exists, Spider-Man exists, Superman exists, and they have their little adventure, and it's just fun. And
I mean, I read that book when it came out, because I'm fucking old. But that was the idea. We didn't try to explain it. We didn't try to put them through some kind of warp to a different universe. It's just, we're just doing this. And if you need an explanation, the explanation is there's yet a third, in addition to the Marvel universe and the Gargoyle universe, there's a third universe where they all exist. Call that the Disney Uber property universe, or whatever you want to call it. But the idea is just, hey, let's just run with it. Because the truth is that Gargoyles, the current continuity is set in the late 90s, whereas the current Fantastic Four continuity obviously is set in the present. And I didn't go back, and we talked about it even, but I didn't go back and say, okay, let's grab what was the state of the Fantastic Four in 1997. And let's do that Fantastic Four. We're like, no, let's just do today's Fantastic Four with today's Gargoyles, and we won't mention what year it is because there's no way that works. So we're just going to do it and have fun with it. Again, if you're too obsessed with the continuity, then just take it as yet a third universe where it both exists.
I'll tell you what, if you eventually do another one of these things, that's a great idea, because I think in 97 it was the Jim Lee Heroes Reborn Fantastic Four, and that would be a crazy pairing to do Heroes Reborn FF and Gargoyles, time appropriate. That'd be cool.
Maybe, but at this point, if I did it again, I'm like, I now have this little bit of continuity between these three stories. I'm just going to pick up where that left off.
That's true. Are you able to play with other Marvel characters, or is it specifically Fantastic Four?
Yeah, we've got Tony Stark in there. There were some characters off limits, including Peter and Miles. I don't know why. I mean, in other words, these were legal decisions that...
Yeah, that is interesting, because they both have 50 appearances each month in comics. So...
Yeah, I don't know what the reasoning was, but no one had a problem. I said, hey, I'd love to put Tony Stark in a room with David Xanatos. No one had a problem with that.
Oh, what a
cool
pairing,
various villains from the Marvel universe and the Gargoyles universe, and there were no issues, but there were certain things we just weren't allowed to do. And that's fine, because, the Marvel universe is a big playing field. And there are tons of great characters. There were certain characters that just felt like, oh, we got to do them. And so we've got, the Great Gargoyle, the Isaac Christian's gargoyle, the gargoyle from the first issue of Incredible Hulk.
Of course.
From
All the
1960.
gargoyles. That's hilarious.
So all the characters named Gargoyle are in these two books, one or the other, and other characters as well. We just had a fun time with it. Got gorgeous art. Enid Ballum drew the Marvel issue, which looks fantastic, and George Cambadeas drew the Dynamite issue, which also looks fantastic. And we got Mole Man and Diablo and all sorts of fun stuff.
Does Victor show up at all?
I'm not saying.
Okay, nice. Nice. You gotta let us, we gotta read it for a reason. We gotta see what happens.
Right, yeah. You need a little surprises.
Yeah, so what I say, Gargoyles, obviously the inspiration probably is you, because like you're the creator of Gargoyles. With the team, you really put this out there into the world. With Fantastic Four, like, what are your inspirations for that? Is it John Byrne? Is it Kirby Lee? Like, where do you pull?
There's it's mostly Kirby Lee for me. But I was definitely influenced by John's run on FF. And you can see those influences in going all the way back to episodes of Gargoyles from the 90s. But I think for me, it starts with Lee and Kirby. And the only sort of adjustment that I make is that my take on Sue is I think, a little more evolved. I mean, I think even at the time, Lee and Kirby were sort of aware that Sue was getting short shrift, and they wrote a little bit to justify why they were doing what they were doing. But to me, and if you see my issue of Fantastic Four Fanfare, the story I wrote in issue 4.
You did that with Bagley, right? That was really good. I like that.
I would say it again. I didn't hear you.
You did that one with Bagley, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was I really loved that. I thought
fantastic. One thing that was great about it is, I was commissioned to write a 10-page story, and Bagley was like, Mark was like, I need 11 pages. This is good. I need 11. I have to have 11. And I could never have talked them into giving me 11. But Mark could. So it ended up being an 11-page story. And it gave him a little more elbow room at the end of the story to give it a little more space. But it's a lovely, I think, Mark did a terrific job, and it's a lovely little story about the FF taking a night off. But it really, for me, the biggest badass among the Fantastic Four is without a doubt Sue Richards. Both her powers and her personality, she's the one. And I was gratified seeing the movie, because that's clearly true in the movie as well. When you think about Sue's power set, and then who she is as a mom, as a wife, as a human being, she is the biggest badass in this team of 4. And that's the one thing that I don't think Stan and Jack got their head around. And otherwise, I got nothing but praise for Stan and Jack. But that's the one thing that I don't think they saw. That they had created a character whose power set and whose life history made her somewhat unstoppable, and they didn't realize that. So I just sort of lift her up among the group a little more into a more first among equal kind of feel to it for me.
Yeah.
But otherwise, the characterization of the other 3 is very much there, and it's especially important for Reed. Johnny and Ben, who I adore, both of them, they're easy to write. I mean, really easy to write. Reed is tougher, and the reason Reed is tougher is because a modern audience doesn't understand that archetype. And it's true for Scott Summers, Cyclops. It's true for Reed Richards. There are probably other characters that I can't summon out of my brain right this minute. It's a little fogged with cold medicine. But this is the type of hero that in those days was commonplace. It's the tall, slim, strong, silent type. Gary Cooper, Gregory Peck when he wasn't playing a villain, Henry Fonda when he wasn't playing a villain. These are the lean, tall men of whether they're young or old.
Jimmy Stewart, right? Yeah.
Jimmy Stewart, absolutely, yeah. And that is an archetype of heroism that we have lost largely. And so what I see a lot of with modern writers dealing with Reed or Scott, those two in particular, is they don't know how to, they're not watching enough TCM. And they don't know how to write those two. And so they wind up going, I'm going to make him a villain, or I'm going to make him make incredibly stupid decisions, arrogant, ridiculous decisions. And I really object to that with these two characters, because to me it's like, no, you're not getting the archetype, and so you're conceding something that wasn't part of the characters in the first place. So to me, that sort of, Henry Fonda in The Lady Eve. I'm not just talking about action movies. I mean, it's like Jimmy Stewart and Harvey, even. Gary Cooper in Love in the Afternoon. It doesn't even have to be an action movie, but you can also look at westerns with these kind of guys, and it's easy to see what the archetype is, but we don't really embrace that in a modern equivalency. So I just sort of go back to what Stan and Jack viewed as this archetype for Reed and play to that. He's not an asshole. He's not a villain. He's, I guess, somewhat arrogant, but he's not arrogant to the point of doing ridiculously stupid things to alienate his own family.
Well, there's a difference between him and Victor, right? That's a very distinct difference between the two of them that I think gets lost in the modern day, especially.
I kind of agree. So, if you elevate Sue and you don't turn Reed into a schmuck, then it all balances out well. Ben and Johnny are still Ben and Johnny. You don't have to make them stupid. You don't have to make them do ridiculously foolish things. They've been heroes now for long enough that, Ben doesn't have to get so angry that he's punching out taxi cabs because he's annoyed, right? And Johnny's can be more mature than the 16-year-old he was when we started with him.
Yeah.
But you can still play their personalities pretty much the way Stan and Jack established them, and you can do that for Reed as well, as long as you understand where that's coming from. And then you elevate Sue into an equal or even greater than equal position, and I feel like suddenly those four work so well together. And then I really love playing the kids. I love Valeria. I love Franklin. I love Alicia Masters. And I'm interested, I haven't done much with them, but I'm interested in Alicia and Ben's kid.
A Skrull and a Kree, right?
Yeah.
Like, what an interesting dynamic to the family.
Yeah, and to me, expanding that family makes a lot of sense. All the time that was spent finding reasons for Ben and Alicia not to get together, it's like, why? This isn't Sam and Diana on Cheers. The series isn't dependent on maintaining sexual tension between Ben Grimm and Alicia Masters. Let them get together, and let's let these characters mature. And so the fact that they adopted two kids, I think, is fantastic. And all that sort of family stuff, which I've been doing in Gargoyles now for 30 years, I think, if you allow that to blossom in FF, that makes for a great, that importance of family or clan, as the Gargoyles would define it, but it's really the same thing. that made it easy to write these 2 issues. It really did, because their values are very similar.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I'm really excited. I think they're going to mash up perfectly well. We were talking about the characters. What did you think about? We touched about how much you loved Sue in the new Fantastic Four movie, which I thought Sue was great, and I was literally brought to tears at the end of that movie. Man, I don't want to spoil anything for anybody who hasn't seen it yet, but at the end of that movie, there was a moment that happened that literally was like bringing me to tears. She was amazing. Vanessa Kirby, solid in that movie. What do you think about the other characters in particular? How do you think they handled the Reed in this movie?
I think they did great. I really do. I mean, I really enjoyed the movie. I thought it was a lot of fun. Obviously, for me, this was a much better Galactus than what we got in Rise of the Silver Surfer.
Inarguably, right? Like,
I mean,
like no one can argue that.
It isn't fun to fight a cloud. I think if Green Lantern and Rise of the Silver Surfer has taught us anything, fighting clouds just as visually undramatic as it can get. And so this Galactus was really interesting. This Silver Surfer was really interesting. And Ben was really interesting. And so was Johnny. And again, I like a Johnny who can be smart. You know, he doesn't have to be a dumbass.
Thank you. So many of my friends were like, yeah, Johnny wasn't as funny or as goofy as I wanted him to be. And I was like, Johnny is not just that dumb character. Like,
right. Yeah. I mean, I thought he was plenty goofy at times. Yeah. And then, but you know, underneath it all, he could do some serious stuff. And that to me, again, is you're allowing the character to mature. You're allowing, you have to figure all 4 of these people will, or the 3 that Reed brings on this rocket ship, had something to contribute. Because if not, why bring them? There wasn't some kind of gun to Reed's head saying you have to bring Johnny too, or even that you have to bring Sue. They had something to contribute, and Ben obviously he needed to pilot the thing. But you didn't need to bring Sue. You didn't need to bring Johnny. You brought them because they had something to contribute one way or another. And that doesn't mean that instantaneously Johnny suddenly had to be some kind of brilliant guy. But over time, and this is a movie that's taking place sometime after the Fantastic Four, gains their powers. It's not like, hey, we're seeing their origin story. We get their origin over the course of the movie, but we're not in that moment. We're years past that, right? And so I like the thing. If I wanted to nitpick, I might have a couple tiny little things I could pull out and complain about, but I don't want to nitpick because I enjoyed it too much.
Yeah. When Pedro Pascal was first announced, I was like, that is not who I would have picked to play Reed. But I think he did such a great job because he showed a side of Reed that we don't usually see, even in comics. Like, I love what you were saying about a lot of people don't get the archetype, so they just kind of like want to make him evil, or they make him like this like goofy, like absent-minded professor, right? He's the guy who can't see that his wife needs him because he's in some kind of experiment or something like that. Pedro was able to play him with the humanity where you felt the love for Sue, the love for their family. And I think that a lot of people misunderstand that that's Reed's priority, is Sue and the family outside of everything else. And I think Pedro nailed it with a nuance that I don't think anybody else really would have done, that was maybe more in line with what people would think to play Reed. I don't know. What'd you think?
I thought he did a fantastic job. No pun intended. I really thought it was great. Again, if I wanted to be nitpicky, I'm like, just shave, but I don't care about that. I really don't. That he had a beard. It's fine.
Like the little thing that bothers me is that they all have like a different costume. Like they all got a different uniform. Like that bothers me for some reason. But you know what? Let it go because
Yeah,
that's not the important part, right?
it's not important to me. They all had thematically the same idea behind the costume, and if there were variations to it, fine. I don't care. God knows there have been variations in the comics over the years. So
That's true.
it to me it was strong. It was a lot of fun, and we'll just have to see where they go with it. And But I thought it was, I really enjoyed it, and
Yeah.
I also really enjoyed Thunderbolts. So,
Thunderbolts was good. I really liked that. That one
so
actually took me by surprise.
I think we've had a couple of Marvel movies that I haven't loved recently, but probably I've liked more than a lot of fans have. And But I really felt with these two, it's like, okay, now I'm starting to feel it again. This sense of it's starting to come together again, and it's feeling good to me. And I think there's a sort of level of cynicism um, that people want to hold on to. That just sort of, no, these movies suck now. They're not as good as they used to be. It's like, to me, it's like, drop that. Just sit down and see the movie. Then tell me what you think. Don't walk into it deciding that Marvel's lost it, because they haven't.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that as some kind of Marvel shill. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed both those movies quite a bit. And those
Yeah.
are the last two I've seen, right? I mean, there has been.
Yeah, Thunderbolts was good. I liked Fantastic Four. I love how much New York is a factor in Fantastic Four. It's weird because like you can see Fantastic Four, they go into the negative zone, they go into space, they do all kinds of crazy stuff. New York, I think Spider-Man and Fantastic Four, New York is so important to those properties. And I
Yeah.
think the movie did a great job of showing the importance of New York as a character. Also, Manhattan is a big part of Gargoyles. So is that something that you're like leaning into in the Gargoyles Fantastic Four books? Is the importance
Absolutely. I
of
mean,
Manhattan? All right.
again, it's this idea that you can see the Baxter Building from the Erie Building and vice versa, and um, and playing in this ballpark of Manhattan. That's the lifeblood of Gargoyles, and is extremely important to Fantastic Four. So being able to have, um, you know, uh, this encounter take place there is essential, and it's in both books. Well, all three actually, including
Heck
the
yeah.
preview.
So the Gargoyles Demona free comic book day, that's already dropped. It was for free. You had a
Right.
chance to get it in May. Some shops probably still have it out there. You can find it. It's available. And now we've got Fantastic Four Gargoyles in October. And then a month after that, Gargoyles Fantastic Four from Dynamite.
Right.
So, and then after that, you said, what's next? You said you got Darkwing Duck crossing over with the Gargoyles?
Right. So we have a winter special coming out first, I think, in December, where Broadway sets out to solve a cold case of Elisa's with help from Bronx. And then at the start of the new year, we've got Gargoyles meets Darkwing Duck, which is another crossover of two universes that we don't put them through any portals or anything like that. It's just we're just doing it again. We're just doing it. Gargoyle. We're in a universe where Darkwing and Gargoyles coexist, and it's
And you're working with
wacky.
Tad on that one, right?
Working with Tad Stones, who created Darkwing Duck. And when he created Darkwing Duck, I was on staff at Walt Disney Television Animation. I was a junior executive working in development, and Tad was one of my mentors. And I helped develop the show with Tad. I mean, he created it, but when we began, the show was called Double O Duck, and it was much more of a spy parody. And as we evolved, Darkwing became much more influenced by the Shadow, and it became much more of a superhero parody. And of course, my background was superheroes. I'd worked at DC Comics for years. And so Tad and I worked on that together. And then when I was selling Gargoyles, and Michael Eisner passed on the comedy version of Gargoyles, it was Tad who suggested, instead of having all these funny little gargoyles running around, he had just seen Beauty and the Beast. What if we had one big gargoyle to interact with this human female who was the gargoyle's friend? And so Greg Guler and I created Goliath, and we took the whole show and put it through the prism of Goliath. So I think I had not an essential role, but an important role in the development of Darkwing. And likewise, Tad had an important, if not essential, role in the development of Gargoyles. And so when Nate contacted me about doing Darkwing Gargoyles, I said, well, I'd love to do that, but we need to call Tad. And fortunately, when Tad was contacted, he's like, oh, that sounds great, but we need to call Greg. So we wound up plotting the story together. I did the scripting, but we plotted it together. And Tad did some covers, and he also did some just comedy sketches, rough sketches to give to our artist Ciro for some gags, here and there. And I think it's super fun. It's really pretty silly, but it doesn't mean that Goliath doesn't behave like Goliath or Elisa doesn't behave like Elisa. I think everyone's behaving in character in a world that's just a little sillier than, or maybe a lot sillier than the typical Gargoyle story. And the interactions between Goliath and Darkwing are kind of priceless from my point of view. I mean, I know I'm biased, but because I'm a big fan of both these characters and help create them all. But, I've been a part of Darkwing since the beginning, and obviously creator of Gargoyles, and you can flip that for Tad. So I think it's just a lot of fun for Tad, and I've been working on that. And of course, right now, Frank Parr, who was my partner and co-showrunner on the TV series Gargoyles, Frank and I are doing Gargoyles Demona together, and it's great working with Frank again. So we figured out the storyline together. I'm writing it. Frank is doing some completely gorgeous artwork on Gargoyles Demona, colors by Robbie Bavard that knock me out. So we've got some great stuff. We've still got 2 more issues to come on Demona. If you don't have the first 3 issues, let alone issue 0, go get them. They're out there, and they're really, really fantastic. And I think 4 and 5 are also great. Going to be great. 4 is essentially done, and Frank is still in the middle of drawing 5. But I think they're both going to turn out terrific. So we've got that. We've got Fantastic Four. We've got the Winter Special, and then we've got Gargoyles Darkwing.
Heck yeah, lots to come out. So, Greg, thank you so much for being here and taking time out of your day, especially not feeling so well. So I hope you get well soon.
Thanks.
And we appreciate it, man. And we look forward to the next one. You out there, station, pop, pop, boom. Keep